Alright, this is going to be a little few videos here, which basically are me talking about Derrida's concepts, if you would, be such that you would call them that. You know, Jacques Derrida, his philosophy is very, complex, and it's very unwieldy, and to try to put it in a nutshell would be to miss the point. To try to say that his philosophy or method, also if you would call it that, deconstruction, if you were to say deconstruction is X, or if it is not X, that's not the good way to really go about it. So in these few videos, I'm just going to talk about the concepts, and it's not really in an effort to say, oh, I know everything, that I know everything about Derrida, blah, 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 and you should listen, you should watch my video, because I know all about it. All that stuff is not really about that. It's the reason I do videos in the first place is primarily to realize if I'm not understanding something, to not just think about it, but to talk about it as well, in order to let it sink in further and to think about it more. Also, to get it out in the open, such that this is a comfortable place for me to where I can put a video out and put it out in the open, to where if something is wrong in what I'm saying, if I'm misconstruing something, that somebody will point it out to me. It doesn't matter if you want to be nice, if you want to yell at me or be rude. As long as if you are being rude, as long as you are correct, that's all I can ask. If you want to be rude, that's fine. As long as you're giving me something that is correct and that is going to help me out. I don't care if you're rude. As long as you're giving me something that's helpful and at least somewhat correct. Anyway, in this video, I want to talk about. This is also an effort to talk more about Derrida's concepts in order to revise a paper that I wrote last semester. It was about a 28-page paper, if you include all the footnotes and such. It was about Derrida's logocentrism in his critique of Husserl's philosophy in his book Speech, and Phenomena, also his essay Difference, which is also in that volume. And I kind of argued that, I argued that phenomenology and deconstruction are not incompatible, and that Husserl doesn't quite commit metaphysics of presence, nor does he commit logocentrism. But I also furthermore argued that every kind of philosophy commits logocentrism. And the goal of method of philosophy should be to be as least logocentric as possible. That was my argument, and it involved discussing both Husserl's and Derrida's philosophy. Husserl's philosophy I really have a good grip on, because if you have been taught phenomenology, or if you've read Phenomenology, the main text as well as the secondary text, and it's really not too hard to get a good grip on. Derrida, on the other hand, is not so hard. It's not so easy. And I read Derrida and Derrida's secondary sources, for maybe a couple years or so, but before I, even wrote a paper or made a video on him. So that's really, where I'm coming from. In this video, I just want to talk about what Derrida's critique of phenomenology is. And I've done a video about this previously, but I would like to do it a little more. And I'm going to make another video where I talk about this concept of iterability, which I did not in fact include that concept in my paper, because I did that paper for a advanced writing seminar in philosophy, which is a capstone for the major, so that I can graduate finally. But I wrote for that, and I got an A. But that was among a group of people who were writing from analytic thought. So, I mean, I had lots of good critiques, which was really, really helpful, but I want to improve my understanding nonetheless. So, I'm going to discuss the way I understand his critique and his concepts with respect to that critique. And if any of you who claim to understand Derrida, and I'm one that claims to somewhat understand him, and I've been reading him and his secondary resources for a couple of years now, probably more than that, do tell me, because that's the reason I'm doing this is for that purpose, to improve my grasp, if there can be such a thing in this philosopher. Having talked for 6 minutes as a preface or a primer, let's get on with it. Derrida claims that phenomenology commits metaphysics presence. He also somewhat says that it's a logocentric philosophy, but he mainly says that it's metaphysics presence because a metaphysics presence for him is something that is a philosophy about presence, not about representation and all that, but of presence. That, for one, he via time, his phenomenology of the consciousness of internal time, he says that Husserl gives precedence to the present and neglects the past and future. There is a section of Husserl's phenomenology of eternal time consciousness where he does say that presence has precedence. However, if you read his other sections, you will read that in the main continuum of immanent temporal objects, what is above and below it is the continua of protensions and retensions. The past continua is called retentions, primary and secondary reminiscences, memory and recollections and such. But it's these two columns that every time something happens on the immanent temporal object line, it descends into the past continua. And I have quite a few, maybe like 5 videos on this book of his. But given a certain ITO, immanent temporal object, that is a part of the past. It descends into past and becomes, primary remembrances and also secondary ones, and it becomes this whole build up of time through memory and anticipation via protensions. So we have in present, according to Husserl, I'm doing this very, very briefly because I'm trying to get to a point here. If you want to hear about it more, you can read the book because it's very, very lucid. I would say, the future and past are a part of the present because of the many continua that branch off of certain events in time. But it doesn't matter, this midline of primary impressions or immanent temporal objects. Whatever happens here, it's not like the past and the future are dissected off from it. It's part of the whole same thing. So presence, in a way, blankets. Husserl does not use a word, but in a way, it blankets that. It blankets past and future, and it's all one thing. Where in every immanent temporal object, what is a part of that is certain protensions and retensions in all of their various forms. That's not the best way I'd like to really discuss that, but I have a good grasp on Husserl. It's not really about my grasp on Husserl, it's about my grasp on Derrida. And he says that if you are giving precedence to presence, then you are doing metaphysics of presence. And he, kind of uses his concept of deferral to break that down. And he says that the present always eludes you, and as you try to grasp at it, it slips away. So there can never be a repeatable ideality of presence, ever, because it always slips away via deferral. Deference is with the A is somewhat of a system, I would say, but it's a part of difference and deferral. But the difference with the E and the difference with the A are pronounced the same in French. Différence. I'm not really good French speaker, but there you go. That's what that is. That's the time critique, and I think that's pretty understandable. The other critique has to do with the phenomenological emphasis on immediate experience and the immediacy of experience and consciousness. That is, in phenomenology, the focus, the starting point, is consciousness experience. And the epoche, the brackets, the reductions, those have to do with the fact that we're not gonna inquire into whether entities that are given to us, the phenomena, if you want to call them that, I wouldn't call them that if we're going to talk about Derrida. When they are given to us, we're not gonna inquire whether they are mind. The reductions are, there's the eidetic, transcendental, and phenomenological reductions. That's in a whole nother. That's not a whole nother matter, but it's something that is different. But it's all kind of a similar idea. But the main thing is that the starting point, the focus, is consciousness. That's the experience. It's this immediacy of experience that, given a certain time t, and a certain time, given a certain time t1 and a certain time t2, a certain consciousness will endure between those two. It's what he calls a repeatable ideality in his speech and phenomena. And he critiques that because he says that any kind of gosh, what did he say? I just read about it too. Yeah, I read the entire speech and phenomena, and I've just been constantly reading secondary sources on it, and I've read of grammatology before in parts of it, but I'm trying to get through the whole thing and read it as one whole work. But it's to say that there's an ego, I guess, is what he's kind of getting at. There's the ego that is persisting and that it's repeatable ideality, and that it's sort of a present thing. It's a presence. That this focus on the immediacy of experience via, in Husserl, on ego, is wrong because it's a metaphysics presence. Now, I feel like I should probably revise that paper I wrote, because I feel like I could say things clearer. Because in Derrida, if you want to talk about things, you should try to be clear. If you are Derrida, then you are not going to be clear. And if you're going to talk about Derrida, then you should be clear. Especially if you're talking to analytic philosophers, because they are obsessed with clarity. That's for sure. The thing I feel like that is the line between continental and analytic philosophy is the analytic philosophers have this goal to achieve clarity in everything we say and everything we think and everything that is the world, is to be clear and have clarity in everything. And if you say something weird, they will say, what do you mean by that? You're just giving a weird kind of words that just spitting out weird words in a weird way. Um, anyway, those are my understandings of that. That is his critique there, and Derrida is a person that just, or a philosopher that just kind of, doesn't want to put himself in phenomenology, existentialism, um, structuralism, post-structuralism. Um, he doesn't want to be part of that, and it's just it's a whole new thing. And deference with A is related to iterability, and I'm going to make a video about that, which the same concept is going to go. The same concept will be where if I'm saying something that is somewhat wrong, and then say something to me, comment, don't just thumbs down and move on, just say something so that I can be benefited from this. I'm not doing this for my own, for just to waste my air. It's to think about this stuff and think about it, and hopefully gain some help from others about this as well.